All right, it's good to see everyone this morning. Good Bible study, good singing, a good prayer. We appreciate Jeff's mention of the VBS. VBS. Let's invite the children, everybody that you know, everybody that you're related to. The more that cheer it is, the merrier. And it makes for a good VBS. And they need to be here, those that we know. A lot of work goes in behind the scenes. I've been ran out of here, this building this week. I don't like to be around all of it. There's a lot of things go on. Teachers put a lot of effort into this. And we need to remember that. And we're thankful for them. Jeff and Julie, as was mentioned, had some car trouble. We're thankful that they're safe. A lot of prayers have been going up for them. A lot of anxiety, different things. I don't know how they're in Shreveport when they go to Oklahoma. I don't know. She's hard to talk to on the phone, but they're safe and they're fine. And I bring that up because Jeff is a guy that knows a lot of VBS songs, and I make up songs, so I got a lot of anxiety tonight. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow the singing for the kids will be a little bit better. Maybe I'll make Van say a few things or trap him into making out like he's supposed to do that tonight. But come back this evening. It starts at 6, and we look forward to that very much. I want to start out this morning by noticing a number. I don't know if very many of you got the handout. I know that you got the one with the scripture on because that's the habit of what we do. The other one it goes with the lesson. That number is 16,375. That chart has those pie charts that we all hate, but that number is an annual number. That number, 16,375, is the annual number, the average of teenagers that die per year in the United States of America. That number was made from 1999 to the year 2006. That is the latest data I could get, but I've not seen anything that says more or less or any bright lights come on that say that wouldn't be a good average now. 16,375. And if you look at the chart on the left, it talks about the reasons for those deaths. Malignant neoplasms is illness, cancer, different things like that, serious heart disease, congenital, all of those things that would attribute to their death. But notice on the right side of that chart, unintentional injury is almost half of those deaths. All right, and you look at that and then go over to the right, 48% unintentional injury, but the pie chart on the right recognizes that of those half, almost 3/4 of those unintentional injuries are from motor vehicle traffic accidents. And then there's a list of others, poisoning, drowning, different things that have happened to teenagers that make that number 16,375. Anybody in here ever spend any time in a car? Now here's where the speaker at the school or wherever you're listening to says, now I put this out here for you, those numbers out here for you. Now I don't want to scare you, but I want to scare you. I want you to think about that number. 16,375 deaths among teenagers aged 12 to 19 years old. And I want you to look at that because each one of those numbers represent a person just like you that said, that thought, that will never happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. I want you to realize this morning that you are mortal. That you are not immortal. That death can happen to you, given the right circumstances, if you will. You are apt to, you are probable to die. You will not live forever. It is going to happen to you. And all of us are not immune from it at all. Believe it or not, 100 years ago when I was a teenager, I jumped out of airplanes for no good reason. I jumped off of bridges into water that I didn't know what was below it. I've jumped off railroad trestles. I've jumped off rock ledges into water that I didn't know what was there. I went down Class 6 rapids in Whitewater That is equivalent to going over the falls of Niagara in a barrel, and woke up wondering if I was ever going to breathe again 3 miles down from where I tipped over, and wondering where the raft was. I've wrecked on a motorcycle more times than I can count. I hit a house, I've hit cars, I hit trees. I hit a bridge one time and the forks came back up over and the tire busted my face. And I was about a month getting the taste of that rubber tire out of my mouth. Now I've done all those things, and I think about that. And when I hit that bridge, I was 15 years old. I did all that. I had a motorcycle, did anything I wanted to do, went anywhere I wanted to. 2 years before I had my license, I broke the law. And when people would see me and they'd call my parents or tell my dad down at work, I'd just lie and say they got somebody different. It's not me. And the reason that I did that was because nothing's going to happen to me. I'm immortal. I can do all those things and anything I want to do, anytime I want to do, because I'm going to make it. Nothing's going to happen to me. And every time that one of my friends died or was killed, my parents took me to the funeral home. They made me go because they wanted me to say and see what happens to you on a motorcycle, what happens to you in a car, what happens to you when you don't think. And they wanted me to see it. An up-and-coming star in Hollywood in the 1950s named James Dean took his Porsche for a ride one evening a little too fast. And his last words were, "Don't worry, that guy's got to see us." And 63 seconds later, he was dead with a broken neck. Now maybe, and I don't know, maybe God spared my life so I can tell you some of these things this day to warn you. And again, this isn't so that you will be so terrified that you won't walk out the door, but that you will be keenly aware that, you know what? Regardless of how old I am, I need to be ready. I need to be ready to meet the Lord. That's the bottom line. That's why Ecclesiastes 12:1, what's he say? Remember now the Creator, he says, in the days of your youth. You know who dies? Just old people. Just old people die. You know who gets sick and dies? Just old people. Never happens to anybody else, does it? You know how many chances you get to remember your Creator in the days of your youth? One time. One time. I did not. I look back on my youth already with regret. Oh, you're only young once. That's right. And you only get to remember your Creator one time in the days of your youth. You can accept Him now, or you can reject Him now. It's all part of that admonition, to be ready to meet God. You know something, after this assembly, you could drive to get something to eat. You could drive to get to your house. You could drive to go see a friend. And do you ever think that that just might be the last drive that you ever make? That you won't get to be here tonight? That you won't get to see your mom and dad? That you won't get to see anybody in this room ever again? Have you thought about that? He admonishes us. He admonishes me. Let's look at some examples. In 2 Samuel, I want you to turn, and really the examples that I want to briefly look at is the examples of rebellion. 2 Samuel chapter 15. You remember David was king of Israel at this time, and he had sinned, and he had brought consequences upon his family because of his sin. God said the sword will never leave your house. All right? The Lord told him there was going to be problems, and there was. Absalom is David's son. All right? I want you to recognize in this story, though, that here's a young man that is rebelling against his father. Here's a young man that's rebelling against the nation that he lives in, his parents. Now look at that. Well, is young people rebelling today? And this goes to another level, but this guy is against his father and what his father wants. Look what he says in verse 1. After this, Absalom got himself a chariot and horses, 50 men to run before him. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way of the gate. And when any man had a dispute to come before the king for judgment, Absalom would call, he says, to him and say, from what city are you? And when he said, your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel, Absalom would say to him, see, your claims are good and right, but there is no man designated by the king to hear you. Then Absalom would say, oh, that I would be judge of the land. Then every man would dispute or cause might come to me, I'd give him justice. And whenever a man came near to pay homage to him, he would put out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom was literally kissing up to all the people in Israel. That's what he was doing. Absalom did all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Got up early to do evil. A lot of people do that. Make sure they get up. Now here he is. He is undermining the authority of his father. He's undermining the authority of the king. He's gaining praise and favor with the people. And really and truly, he doesn't have a right to say what he said to the people, that I can do this or I can do that. He has absolutely no idea about their case, whether it's right or wrong or not. But everybody began to fall in love with Absalom. He was a smooth talker. He knew what he was saying. But notice chapter 14. The Holy Spirit reveals Absalom's real problem. Look what he says, verse 25. Now in all Israel there was no one so much to be praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. Good looking. From the sole of his feet to the crown of his head there was no blemish in him. And when he cut his hair on his head, he did it at the end of every year. Got a haircut once a year. Some of you said that to me. At the end of every year, he used to cut it. And when it was heavy on him, and he cut it, and it weighed the hair of his head 200 shekels by the king's weight. That's around 6 pounds of hair. That's a good head of hair that guy had. Thick, beautiful, Absalom, thick hair. He had it all right? But I think the Holy Spirit reveals that to us because he wants us to recognize Absalom's problem. Absalom was full of pride. He thought a lot of himself, and it sort of goes along the way. Here's the son's king, the king of the sun. He's handsome, and my oh my, and in verse 1, chapter 15, he got 50 men out there in front of him to go before him. Why do you think he did that? Here he comes, walking down the street. Absalom, he's the guy. You see? Da-da-da, the beautiful young Absalom is coming. Look at his hair. You see? And so he was full of himself. And it might have been his hair. It might have been his biceps. It might have been his baby blues. I don't know what color his eyes were. But those physical attributes made him full of pride. Proverbs 16:18. What's that say? Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Well, this young man was running around with all his pride in the kingdom and arrogance. I know better than the king. I can do this. And he swayed the people because of his looks, because of his charm. I can do it. I am better. Well, he would have killed his father if he could. And we know what happened. Turn with me to 2 Samuel chapter 18. But David gathered his forces, left Jerusalem, fled Jerusalem. Now look what happens in verse 9. They're going to battle. Absalom happened to meet the servants of David. Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule went under the thick branches of a great terebinth, it's an oak tree, and his hair caught fast in the oak. And he was suspended between heaven and earth, while the mule that was under him went on. Well, there Absalom is. Literally, he was hung up in the very thing that he was hung up on. Absalom became hung up in that tree by his head. That pride and arrogance literally had gone to his head. Yes, sir. Look at Absalom. There he is. That thick, heavy hair that was so beautiful. Look at him now. Well, what happens? Well, here comes this fellow in verse 10. certain man named Joab. Behold, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. And Joab said to the man who told him that, what? You saw him? Why then did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have been glad to give you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. And he goes on to tell him why he didn't. Because David didn't want him killed. And if I'd have done this, you'd have done that. And they go back and forth. Look at verse 14. Joab said, I'm not going to waste my time like this with you. And then he took 3 javelins in his hand, thrust them into the heart of Absalom while he was still alive in the oak. And 10 young men, Joab's armor bearers, surrounded Absalom and struck him, and they killed him. Young people, you know anybody that's hung up on their looks? You know anybody that's hung up on their looks? You know anybody that's hung up on their athletic ability? Do you know anybody that's hung up on some kind of ability that they have? But you know what we do? All of it. We get hung up. We get things that are in our way that hang us up, no matter what it might be. And everything focuses around that thing. And I look at Absalom, and I think, you know, pride and arrogance, where did it end up? Where did it lead? It led to Absalom's death. You think the son of a king, the great-looking Absalom, who everybody loved, who loved himself, who loved his looks, do you think that he thought that his prideful life would lead him to death? Well, 2 Samuel 13. Let's talk about Absalom's half-brother Amnon. Now, Absalom, in the beginning of chapter 13 here, we learned that Absalom has a beautiful sister named Tamar. Now, Absalom and his sister are full-blooded brother and sister. Same father David, the same mother. But Amnon is a half-brother to Absalom and Tamar. Now, we learn that she's very beautiful. All right? And Amnon, the half-brother, was so tormented that he made himself sick because of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible to Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend. His name was Jonadab. And now Jonadab is actually his cousin. That's how it worked out. And he says, you know what we can do? Let's do this plan. You pretend that you're sick. And now what you can do is you can ask David to make sure that Tamar comes and takes care of you while you're sick, and then you can proceed to do what you want to do. Well, long story short, that's what happened. He pretended he was sick. She made him cakes. He came in and he grabbed her and he raped her. That's what he did. After that, verse 15, then Amnon hated her with a very great hatred, so that the hatred which he had hated her was greater than the love which he had loved her. Well, here's a young man filled with lust. Filled with lust. Is that around much now for young people? Is that out there? Lust, physical lust. We get much exposure to that as a young person. You know, you can lust after all kinds of things. All kinds of things can get in our way. You know what? I want a car so bad I'm just burning up for it. If I don't get that iPhone, I'm going to die. And we lust and we crave those things, and those things get in front. You know, a lot of people lust after attention. A lot of young people. I'll do anything for attention. And that comes out in a million different ways. And this is opinion. This isn't about my view, your view. I'll tell you, one of the ways I think that comes out is the recent surge in body piercing. You know what? I'm not getting enough attention at the house, so I'm going to run a 5-pronged fork through my lip while I talk to you. Huh? Bars and hooks and studs and earlobes that sag down on the shoulder blades. Look at me. I'm not getting enough attention. Do you see me? No, but I want to watch you eat. I don't know how you're going to do it. All right? And now, again, matter of opinion. There's all kinds of different reasons, but tattoos is another way. I've never known a tattoo that doesn't say, for someone to come up and say, hey, what's that and what's that mean? And how is that? And it draws attention. Application, more tattoos, more attention. Comes out in all kinds of ways. There are people that crave that long for that, lust after that. Sometimes attention is sought out by drinking. Sometimes that attention is sought out all kinds of use. You know, there are young ladies that commit fornication just to have somebody pay attention to them. Long for that. Well, whether it's a person, whether it's an object, whether it's a possession, that kind of lust can get in our way. You know how that ended up for Amnon? Look at 2 Samuel again. Look at verse 21. David heard about what had happened. You know what he did? Nothing. He's just angry. But Absalom spoke to Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. He hated him so bad, he didn't speak to him. You know how long? After 2 full years, the next verse says. Absalom goes to his father David and says, I want to have a great feast. I want to have a great party for all my brothers. Is that all right? That'd be all right. And then he goes to his servants and he says, listen, while we're all partying down and he is drunk, I want you to kill him. And you know what? That's what they did. That's how Amnon died. And I look at that. I think, after 2 years, you'd think everything was all right. But not with Absalom. So what happened with Amnon and his rebellion with lust? What did it get him? Do you think when he did what he did, do you think that it would be the result? Do you think he thought, well, in 2 years, they're going to gut me? And because I'm doing this, it's going to end my life? You know what? He was killed for his sexual immorality. I'm going to tell you something. You know that still happens today. That happens every day. A husband, a brother, a friend, tempers flare, things happen. There's somebody every day killed. Same reason. Well, 1 Samuel chapter 2. Another case of rebellion. Hophni, Phinehas. We know them. These are 2 sons of Eli. Now when you look at that passage, verse 12, he says, now the sons of Eli were worthless men. They did not know the Lord. I'll tell you what, when you read that, it's a little bit confusing, but what was happening is people were bringing their sacrifices to Shiloh, and what they were doing, they were making those sacrifices an abomination. This is how it ought to be done, and they were saying, no, we're going to do it this way. And if you don't like the way we're doing it, we're going to force you to do it the way we've got this. Whether you like it or not, we're going to do it the way we want to do it. All right? So they abhorred the sacrifices that were brought to them. All right? Notice what he says in verse 22. Eli was very old. That's their father. He kept hearing all these things his sons were doing in all of Israel. And how they lay. Here's another plus. How they lay with the women who were serving at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And he said to them, why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all the people. No, my sons, it is no good report that I hear of the people the Lord spreading abroad. If someone sins against a man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? But they would not listen to the voice of their father, for it was the will of the Lord to put them to death. They didn't listen to what their father said to do. They didn't heed the voice of their father, what they said to do. Now, as you look at that, look at chapter 3, and what happens is the whole house is responsible for that. Eli is responsible for his children. One day, verse 12, he says, I have spoken concerning his house from the beginning to end, and I declare to him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons blasphemed God. And who? Eli. He did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for sacrifice or by sacrifice or of offering forever. He's not going to accept it because of the evil that was done. Well, the Lord had made up his mind because of their corruption that they would be punished, put to death. How'd that happen? Chapter 4. They go off to war in the Philistines. Now they have the Ark of the Covenant. Now here is young men that were supposed to be facilitating God's house, supposed to be having a good rapport and being represented or represent God well. They did not. They violated that. All right? Now it's time to go off to war. Well, what are we going to do? Well, let's take the Ark of the Covenant. You know what it is? Well, it's just a good luck charm. It's just like a rabbit's foot. Do we view that sometimes? Our religion, our faith. It's okay. I've got it right here in my back pocket. Sometimes that's where they wear it. I think Eli's son did that. But they found out, and they were slaughtered in that battle. Well, you think about Absalom and his pride. Amnon and his lust that he had. Hophni and Phinehas, their corruption and religion. And I look at those. Can we parallel those with what's common today? With what's common today with us? To turn away, to transgress, to rebel against God. While in their case, all of their cases, their rebellion led to physical death. I can promise you your rebellion with God will lead to spiritual death, which is worse. It is worse. It all could lead to physical death, but it will certainly lead to your spiritual death. Rebellion always does. Those examples of rebellion, there's a lot more, but they're commonplace in congregations of Christ today. Rebellion is common. The age-old question, who is responsible for that rebellion? And again, I look at Absalom and Amnon. God did not hold David accountable for that. He did set the stage for that. But God did hold Eli accountable for Hophni and Phinehas. We see that Eli's held accountable. Accountability. Our accountability. The judging of our influence. The opportunities that we have as parents and young people for good and bad. Those examples that we said. How are they to be judged? By God. Rebellion. Everybody knows teenagers don't do what you tell them. Why, everybody knows that young people don't listen. Everybody knows what the Bible says. Raise up a child in which he should go. When he's old, he'll not depart from that. Everybody knows that there are exceptions to that. Everybody knows that. Have we taken the exception to that? And because there has been so much rebellion, it seems to me like the exception that we're hanging on to has become the rule. And we want to make it the rule because of all the rebellion that we have witnessed. Is it me, or has that exception become that? You know, when a young person rebels, a lot of times the question is, how in the world did that happen? How could that happen? And why did it happen? You know, the reports from all over the country that I get in my office every day, there's no young people in the church. Nobody's left. Everybody's 90 years old. What happened to the young people? Where'd they go? What happened to people that are 30 and 40, teenagers, children? Where are they? What happened to everybody in the church? I don't know if just one answer is enough. I think there's a number of reasons that it has happened. It's not a question of if it happened. It's happened. It's happened. Why is rebellion so common? One reason I believe why rebellion is so common is because worldly friends and parents that don't minimize the impact of worldly friends. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, Paul says that. He tells us to be not deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. Well, I know it's slim pickings out there in the world for good friends. I went to school, and it is slim pickings. And I'll tell you what, you're going to have worldly friends. No matter how old you are, you're going to have worldly friends. And those worldly friends are going to have worldly parents. And you're going to get around worldly parents, and then you're going to think, you know what, I kind of like this way better than my house. And so you long for the day when you can bolt from that house that you're in and be like your friends' parents. Seems like a lot less pressure there. Your friend used profanity, you will too. Your friends drink, you will too. Your friends use drugs, smoke weed, you will too. Your friends fool around, you will too. And as a parent, as Paul says, how can parents be so fooled and so blind to think that their child will be the first one that is not corrupted by evil companions? Why do we think that? Now, when you see your child, your children, being influenced more by their friends than your child is influencing them, you know what you need to do? Step up to the plate and stop the friendship. That's when it needs to be done. Ungodly friends will make and break your child to be ungodly. He or she's not going to be the first exception. But you know what? Over the years, it'll be all right. My child will be all right. Now, evil friends, in the process to yielding to worldly friends, you're going to yield to youthful lust. That's right. Each example that we had this morning are examples of youthful lust that led ultimately to the death, their physical death, because they caved to those. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22, Paul tells us to flee those lusts. Go away from those lusts. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Paul instructs us not to be conformed, not be like your friends, but be transformed. How do you do that? Renew your mind, refresh your mind, know what the Word says, follow that. Don't be like them, is the instruction. Young people and parents, our society today has kicked up the level to another notch. And I'm telling you what, you better be aware of what's out there and what they're walking around in. It's not like it was when I was a kid. You better believe it's not. And it's getting worse every single day. And you better stop turning a blind eye to it. Be aware of the darts that he throws. He devours everything in his sight. He has no mercy. And he is eating the young people up every single day. No matter what he's told you, he is not your friend. And every step that you take with Satan is one step against, and it is in rebellion to God. All kinds of things out there in the world, isn't there? All kinds of things to lure all of us to rebel against God. Is there any on the inside? Philippians chapter 2. I want you to notice what Paul says, the Philippian brethren. He's exhorting them to be lights of the world. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now not only in my presence, but much more in my absence. There's our passage. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. You know. Young people, why are you here? Why are you here? I've seen that. Mom and Dad brought me, stupid. Why else do you think I'm here? It's a ride. That's right. That's why you're here. But why are you here? Why have you come this day? I look at what Paul's telling the Philippian brethren. He says, listen, I want you to be a Christian. I want you to be Christ-like. I want you to be the example that the Lord would have you to be. I want you to live the life. I want you to work on yourself, not just because I'm on the scene, when I'm not even on the scene. When I've left you alone. Would you be here if your parents didn't bring you? You know, I've seen people, grown brethren, act totally different when the new preacher comes to town. When the gospel meeting preacher comes to town. Oh, boy, I'll tell you what, when they want people to see a different, they do it. People act that way. But you know what? Your parents give you all kinds of things. And they have. But one thing they cannot give you is faith. Faith is not inherited. It is not inherited. And I look at these boys that we've talked about. Look at their fathers that were godly men. And for some reason or another, they just didn't pick it up by osmosis. Are we as parents and did we think that was just what would happen to the kids? That we just can't figure out why they've rebelled? You look at the kings of Judah. How many evil kings were there? How many? Then they'd have a faithful son every once. Did that mean that their son would be faithful? Not at all. We know better than that. But do you buy this? Do you buy what we're doing? Buy the truth and sell it not. 2 songs of prayer. Hit it. Let's go. Are you letting the things that we teach and preach sink in and make changes in your life? Or are you going through the formalities of something called religion till you can get away? You really need to answer that. You really need to make faith your own faith, not the faith of your parents. It needs to go in you. You need to be converted. You need to be convicted. Hopefully there'll come a time in your life when you will have enough interest to open the Word of God and see to it that the things that are written there are really true and will happen to save your soul. But when you do that, and I encourage that, I think we all ought to do that. To look at it, to read it, to study it. Be honest with what it tells you. That's all I would ask. But if you're just going through the motions for your parents, you're not going to be here very long. You're going to be gone. If you're doing it just for them and nothing else is going on, don't be surprised. What it says in Luke chapter 1. Luke chapter 1, verse 3. It seemed good to me, Luke says, also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write in an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you may have, now what? Certainty concerning the things that we've been taught. We want to be certain of the things we've been taught. Give yourself that. I'm not here for anybody else. I want to be certain what the Word of God says. I want to apply it to my life, make application to my life. I want my faith, when I stand before the Lord, to be my faith. And every young person in here that can hear it and is accountable understands what I'm saying. Well, I've checked it out. I've went through that. I've went through the history of the church. I was with them all those years. And I've been very objective. And you know what I've seen? Nothing but division, backbiting, fighting, infighting. All I've seen is people that exhume hatred. A lot of times, that's used for an excuse. But a lot of times, the division that's been in the church that they're located with, a lot of times there's good reason there. And you know, I look at 1 Corinthians, and I look at the division, I look at the sin, I look at the lawsuits, I look at the adultery, and then I look at the beginning again about verse 3 where he says, to the church at Corinth, or the church of God at Corinth. Still a church. All of that. And what's the problem there? Verse 3 of chapter 3, he says, for you are still in the flesh, for while there is jealousy and strife among you, he says you are not of the flesh, behaving only in a human way. You're just acting carnally. There's a lot of people in the church of Christ that don't know what spiritual minds is and carnal minds. Paul wants us to know. But all that division, and you think about that. I don't want anything to do with that. I've had enough of that. And you know what? The fact of the matter is, from the church of Jerusalem to the church of Christ in Sandyville, do you know that churches will always have problems? Always have. And I promise you that they always will. That's just the nature of the beast. That's what we do when 100 people get together and try to do what's right. That's what happens. And we need to accept that. I think we're all mature enough to know that and recognize that. But you know what happened? When we have those debates and discussions and divisions, do you know that your children aren't watching what's about? They're not interested in the problem, so to speak. They're interested in you. They want to know what you say about brother so-and-so. They want to know what you say about brother so-and-so. And how you act. And how you treat people. And what they remember is there ever a moment during that time that they seen just a glimpse of the Spirit of Christ in me? Or what did they see during all that? And we wonder why in the world that they crave just to get a breath of fresh air and get away from it all. I don't know why my children have rebelled. I just don't know why they're not interested in spiritual things. Well, that brings me to another point why I believe that some children have rebelled. Why do children rebel? Because we have parents who are weak. You know, weakness can manifest itself in a lot of ways. And one of those ways is hypocrisy. Moms and dad, listen, if you're not living godly lives that are consistent, your children are not going to be either. They are not going to be living the same life. And really, don't be surprised if they're not very strong. It's true. Some young people were raised with parents in the church all those years who were nothing but hypocrites. Parents who take their role seriously cannot ignore the power of their example. They cannot do it. What we say and what we do in front of our children are vital to their spiritual life. I'll tell you what, you can succeed in fooling every single person in this room, but you're not going to fool your children. You will not. They know if you're the same person on Monday that you profess to be on Sunday. They know. And when children see a difference between practice and profession, you know what they do? They lose respect for you. And then they lose respect for the religion that you profess. Peter says to lay aside hypocrisy. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. Paul says in Romans, you guys that preach don't commit adultery. Do you commit adultery? He gives some examples, more examples than that. But what that does, it causes the Gentiles to blaspheme God because of the hypocrisy. You think it caused your children to blaspheme God? Because of your hypocrisy? I think so. Galatians chapter 2, verse 13. We see the example. Oh, Paul went straight to Peter. But what did he go to him for? If Peter and even Barnabas can be caught up in hypocrisy, moms and dads, we can too. Judges chapter 2, verse 10. Judges chapter 2, verse 10. And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers, and there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. How'd that happen? Absolutely no Bible study in the home. Nothing about scriptures in the home. How can an entire generation not know anything about God? Their parents never taught them. And if you think your children are going to get enough here, you're wrong. They need to hear it in the house. They need to hear you talking about the Bible. They need to hear you make religious application to things in their life. Oh, we know what it says, but to make application, turn the TV off. Get their attention. Talk about it. Make it a way of life. That when you bring up religion, you bring up God, they're not embarrassed about it. What are we doing talking about this? How do they respond to you? Why did we lose all of our kids? Why have our children rebelled? Because many, many, many parents have failed miserably. Failed them. No more important service can you do to your children than to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And no more disservice can you do than not to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. If there is, somebody needs to tell me. I don't know what else it could be that you could do for them. What can we say that's been a lasting impression on our children? What do they think that you think this place is all about? Do they know what Matthew 6:33 is? Do they look at you and know you desire this above all things? Or do they look back and it's work? Work was more important in our life. Entertainment was more important in our life. Sports, life, just catching up on some sleep sometimes was more important in my parents' life. Why do our children rebel? Young people, I encourage you to heed the warning. I encourage you to listen to the examples that God had stated about your life, about how your life ends, about how you're not going to be here as long as you may think. And you know what? Even if you live to the average age in America, 78, if you live to be 100, that's another admonition. You can look back and say that you served God in your life, in your youth. And I'll tell you what, God only provides the ways, the pressures that are in your life right now. He does. And He can. Romans 3:23 says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. If you know what sin is, you're going to be held accountable for it. I would encourage every young person to consider that. And if they've never obeyed the gospel, if you've never obeyed the gospel, you need to do that. You need to put on Christ and begin those habits that are spiritual and that you can grow and learn those words of salvation sometimes in spite of your parents. To the parents and grandparents, I encourage you to examine your hearts. Ask yourself, is it I? That's a tough question. Is the reason my children and grandchildren are not faithful, is it me? Is it something that I did? Is it I? I would encourage you to go talk to them about it and ask them that question. Did I do something? Because, a question like that has to do just as much about you as it does them. And if it is you, you need to fix it. And as a parent, because of that, you're the one responsible for opening that discussion about the souls that they have that are lost. Eli was accountable. Are you? Are you accountable? You know what? If you refuse to do that, you know what you are? Rebel. You rebel against God. To all of us, I want to say this, that waiting is the most unwise and dangerous thing that you can do to make these things right. Final passage, Ecclesiastes 12. What's he talking about? Verse 6. Before the silver cord is snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered, he says at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. These are inevitable things that will happen. You know what he's talking about? Death. Death. You're going to die. It is inevitable. That's what he's talking about. Why? Why gamble with life, your life? Why gamble with death? That's his question. In the gamble with yourself. In that gamble with the ones that you love. Rebel without a cause. Stop rebelling. Have a cause. The cause today is the cause of Christ. If you're here this morning and never obeyed the gospel, we'd certainly encourage you to do that. Jesus said, he that believes and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. That is the gospel of Christ. He wants that obedience. He requires that. To be buried in the baptismal waters. Contact with the blood of Christ that is able to save your souls. If you've not done that, you are lost and you are gambling with your life. If you're outside of Christ by way of public sin, you've obeyed the gospel, you want the prayers of this congregation, please come as together we stand and sing.